In this video, we've compiled Pawn Stars moments when they struck a jackpot deal. So without further ado, let's dive in. Number 5. 1941 Gibson SJ200.
This is a 1941 Gibson SJ200. It was owned by Stephen Stills of the band Crosby, Stills & Nash.
A person named Landon arrived at Rick Harrison's pawn shop, where Rick Harrison was present and engaged in negotiations with him. Landon introduced himself as a guitar collector and revealed that he owned a 1941 Gibson SJ200, previously owned by Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills & Nash. Rick found it cool and compared the situation to a scene from the movie Pulp Fiction. Landon explained that he bought the guitar at an auction and wanted to sell it for a profit. Rick expressed amazement at the guitar's history and Stephen Stills' iconic status in the rock music industry. Landon presented the bill of sale signed by Stephen Stills, adding authenticity to the item.
Everyone who was around in the 60s knows Stephen Stills. What It's Worth, that was the name of the song. I mean, literally, it was considered the rebellion hippie anthem of the 1960s. He's literally an icon. If he's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I'd be shocked.
Rick decided to consult his expert friend Jesse, who possessed extensive knowledge about guitars. Jesse examined the instrument, mentioning crack repairs and praising the guitar's character and sound. He confirmed that Stephen Stills' ownership increased its value significantly. Jesse estimated the guitar's standalone value to be around $75,000 to $90,000, with an additional $20,000 to $30,000 attributed to Stephen Stills' association.
I would put it anywhere between 75 and 90 grand just by itself without the Stephen Stills thing. Stephen Stills could add another 20, 30,000.
Rick expressed concern about the price and negotiated with Landon. Eventually, they agreed on a price of $85,000, with Landon initially asking for $110,000. Despite being higher than Rick's intended bottom line, he considered it a fair price. The deal was made, and they proceeded with the necessary paperwork.
Give me 110, we'll make it a deal.
I'll give you 80 grand.
I can do 90.
I'll give you 85.
I've got to have 90.
Okay. Change your mind, call me.
85, man.
All right.
Number 4. John Carruthers.
I've got this really cool guitar built by John Carruthers. It's absolutely beautiful when you play it.
A mail seller arrived at Rick Harrison's pawn shop with a guitar he wanted to pawn. Chumley, who was present at the shop, engaged in negotiations with him. The seller mentioned that the guitar was built by John Carruthers, who had worked with Leo Fender on the original design of the Telecaster. The seller expressed his intention to sell the John Carruthers guitar for $1,500, highlighting its amazing materials and craftsmanship.
I'd like to get $1,500 for the guitar. It's a really wonderful guitar.
Everybody loves Fenders for the quality, especially those, 50s and 60s guitars.
Chumley acknowledged the popularity of Fender guitars and their association with rock and roll. He mentioned the history of Fender's market share and the release of the Telecaster in the 1950s, which became highly sought after. Chumley praised the John Carruthers guitar and speculated that it could be a valuable prototype, despite lacking any Fender markings. He noted a chip and a condition issue, which the seller admitted was a result of accidentally dropping the guitar when distracted by a young lady. Chumley mentioned that the guitar's wear and tear were normal for an instrument meant to be played.
Even looks like it might have been dropped because that's a pretty big chip. You dropped it?
I did. I met an absolutely gorgeous young lady, and I got sidetracked.
Other than that, the guitar has some normal wear and tear on it, but a guitar like this is built to be played.
Chumley proposed having an expert examine the guitar to determine its value. The seller agreed, expressing his curiosity about the expert's assessment. Shortly after, Chumley returned with an expert named Wolf, who confirmed that the guitar was indeed a John Carruthers. Wolf praised Carruthers' legendary status in the guitar building industry and noted his work with renowned musicians. Wolf examined the guitar closely, pointing out its features, such as Brazilian rosewood and chambering for a resonant sound. He determined that it was a custom shop order and assessed its value at around $2,500, taking into account the lack of markings and the ding from being dropped.
So is this a prototype?
Not really. It's a custom shop order. I know it's a Carruthers guitar for sure. This is what lets me know this is a custom shop order because this pickup is usually not here.
It's been dropped.
Definitely a ding like that is pretty substantial and may affect value a little bit. But when you're talking John Carruthers, I put a value on this of about $2,500.
With the expert's evaluation, Chumley made an offer of $1,600 to the seller, slightly higher than his initial asking price. The seller accepted the deal, recognizing that he already had enough guitars at home. He expressed his gratitude and followed Chumley to complete the paperwork. Reflecting on the transaction, Chumley felt successful as he had purchased the guitar for $400 and sold it for $1,600, considering it a profitable deal.
Why don't we make a deal at $1,600?
It's not like I don't have enough guitars to play at home. I guess I'll take the deal, thank you.
Number 3. Coin counter.
It's a coin counter. I have a 1956 coin counter. I thought it was unique. It's pretty cool. I've never seen one before. I want to try to sell it for $175.
A person arrived at Rick Harrison's pawn shop with a 1956 coin counter that he hoped to sell. Chumley was present at the shop and engaged in negotiations with him. Chumley examined the coin counter and expressed his interest in the unique item. He mentioned that he had never seen one before and found it pretty cool. The person wanted to sell it for $175. Chumley shared some information about the history of coin counters, stating that they had been around since the 1800s but were manually powered. He pointed out that the coin counter had the same standard Johnson company on it, explaining that J.M. Johnson invented it in the early 1900s to make his job as a money counter at a bank easier.
Johnson Company, that would be J.M. Johnson. He was basically a money counter at a bank, so he would manually put them in and count them, and he didn't want to do that anymore. He wanted his job to be easier, and this is what he came up with, to do all the work for him.
Chumley noted that the coin counter was in rough shape, which was expected considering its age and use. He pointed out cracks, chipping, and the absence of a coin-catching tray. However, the person confirmed that the coin counter still worked. Chumley jokingly pretended to be electrocuted when plugging it in.
It's in pretty rough shape, and that's to be expected with something like this. You got a crack right here. You got a lot of chipping. It even seems to be missing like a tray. I'd like to test it out before we talk about anything else.
After confirming that it was in working condition, Chumley mentioned that the coin counter reminded him of the casinos in the 90s. They negotiated a price, with Chumley initially offering $50 and gradually increasing it to $75. The person insisted on $65, considering it top dollar. Eventually, they agreed on a price of $65.
I could do maybe 65.
75.
I could do 65.
Okay, I'll do 65.
Number 2. Declaration of Independence.
I'm here in New York to take a look at one of the most historical documents on the planet, an original Declaration of Independence broadside.
There it is.
Rick arrived in New York to see the Declaration of Independence document. He was greeted by a man named Jeremy who invited him inside to take a look. As Rick laid eyes on the rare July 1776 printing of the Declaration, he was in awe. It was one of the coolest things he had ever seen in his career. The document was in exceptional condition and had never been sold at public auction, making it highly sought after.
This is absolutely amazing.
So the condition of this copy is truly exceptional. It has never been sold at public auction. It's highly sought after.
Jeremy explained the history of the document, mentioning that it was originally printed by John Dunlop in Philadelphia. Around 200 copies were made, and as other printers across the country obtained them, more copies were produced. The particular copy Rick was viewing was from New Hampshire. The document expert, Seth Collar, arrived to authenticate the broadside. He compared it to other known copies, examining the nail holes and the impression of individual letters on the handmade paper. Seth confirmed that the document was legitimate and valued it at around $2 million.
100% legit.
Absolutely. This particular one is a really beautiful copy. I think this could go for $2 million at auction now.
Rick expressed his interest in purchasing the document. He negotiated with Jeremy, settling on a price of $1.45 million. Excited about the purchase, Rick promised to wire the money and pick up the document the next day. He wanted to show it to a friend before completing the transaction. Rick thanked Jeremy and expressed his satisfaction with the deal, knowing that there would be no auction fees involved.
1.45, I think that's fair. I think we can both be happy with that.
I think we got a deal.
Oh my goodness, I own the Declaration of Independence.
Number 1. Prison tokens.
I wanted to know if you, by any chance, have any old Nevada prison tokens for sale.
Not at the moment.
How would you like to buy some old Nevada prison tokens?
A person arrived at Rick's pawn shop and asked Corey if he had any old Nevada prison tokens for sale. Corey informed him that they didn't have any at the moment. However, the person suggested selling the tokens instead. He explained that these tokens were rare because Nevada had a casino inside a maximum security prison, which was unique in the United States. The person had a stack of these tokens with a face value of $1.41 and hoped to get more money for them.
Nevada had a casino that operated inside the maximum security prison. To my knowledge, that didn't happen anywhere else in the United States but Carson City, Nevada.
Corey acknowledged that the tokens were rare as they were only accessible to prisoners from the 1930s to the 1960s. He mentioned that cash was not allowed in prison, but the tokens could be used for various purposes, like trading for gum or making homemade wine. They also discussed the history of the prison casino and how it operated under the control of felons.
Pretty much had to go to prison between the 1930s and 60s to be able to have access to them. He somehow had a casino in the prison that was ran exclusively by felons, and it worked. The guy who was operating the table, he could then take these and go spin them throughout the prison.
The person showed Corey some documentation and pointed out an old craps table from the Sands Casino that had been obtained for the prison casino. They both marveled at the fact that the inmates seemed to be having a good time there.
Where else in the world would a bunch of criminals get to run a legitimate gaming place? And they got away with it for over 3 decades.
When it came to negotiating the price for the tokens, the customer initially asked for $850, but Corey felt it was too high. Corey suggested a range of $400. The customer rejected Corey's offer. Corey then made an offer of $450. Eventually, they settled on $500, and the person was satisfied with the deal.
Your shop, being in Nevada, you would have a perfect place because no one else is going to have these.
500 is the best I could do, buddy.
Let's go ahead and do it.
Pawn Stars is a history show where people often bring rare items with historical significance. You won't want to miss out on our video, Rare Deals on Pawn Star. So click here to watch.